Do you think Ibrahim Traoré cares about only the citizens of Burkina Faso? Well, think again, because he is a strong advocate of African unity that isn't limited to the African continent but goes beyond that, reaching Africans all around the world. And this also includes African Americans, with a population of about 48 million. So, what did Captain Ibrahim Traoré say about African unity that has trembled the Western leaders because their countries have a significant Black population? And what specifically did he say about the United States and Donald Trump's plan to deport immigrants that also include Black Africans? In this video, let's find out. A global shift is unfolding, and at the center of it stands Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso. As former U.S. President Donald Trump threatens mass deportations of African immigrants, Traoré has delivered a powerful warning that Africa will no longer tolerate Western oppression, exploitation, or hypocrisy. For centuries, the U.S. and European powers have extracted wealth from Africa while simultaneously demonizing and mistreating Black people globally. Now, as Trump's Lock and Riley Act prepares the stage for one of the largest deportations of African immigrants in modern U.S. history, Traoré is making it clear that this is not just about immigration. This is about racial oppression, economic control, and the ongoing battle for Black liberation worldwide. Traoré's message to Trump, the U.S., and the West is direct and unambiguous. It's that the days of Africa being exploited while its people are discarded are over. The West will no longer extract Africa's resources while rejecting Africans themselves. It will no longer dictate who governs African nations or how those nations should function. Black people, whether in Africa, the US, the Caribbean, or Europe, are awakening, and they will no longer accept subjugation. This marks the beginning of the end of Western control over Africa and the African diaspora. The strategies that once allowed Western nations to dominate African affairs, military interventions, economic manipulation, and the sponsorship of corrupt African leaders are no longer going unchallenged. A new wave of African leadership, unapologetically nationalist and fiercely anti-imperialist, is emerging, determined to reclaim Africa's sovereignty. Ibrahim Traoré made it clear that for decades the United States has presented itself as the global champion of democracy and human rights. Yet its own record on racial justice and human dignity exposes a far darker reality. African Americans remain trapped in a system of economic deprivation, mass incarceration, and police brutality. Black communities in the U.S. have been subjected to government policies that destroy wealth, limit upward mobility, and criminalize Black existence. The very country that claims to promote democracy and freedom abroad has, for much of its history, been built on the backs of enslaved Africans and oppressed Black citizens. Now, with Trump's return to power, the U.S. is once again turning against African immigrants, treating them not as human beings, but as problems to be removed. The Lock and Riley Act, signed into law by Trump, is not just an immigration policy. It is an anti-Black, anti-African strategy that seeks to further marginalize Black people on U.S. soil. This policy targets African immigrants, labeling them as security threats, despite their contributions to the American economy and society. This hypocrisy cannot be ignored. If the U.S. truly cares about human rights, why does it refuse to acknowledge the deep racial inequalities and injustices faced by Black Americans? If it is so committed to freedom and democracy, why does it overthrow African leaders who refuse to submit to Western interests? If the U.S. is truly a land of opportunity, why does it continue to block economic mobility for African immigrants while exploiting African resources? Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black Africa. Let's continue now. Trump's mass deportation plan comes at a time when many Africans in the U.S. are working, building businesses, and contributing to society. Instead of recognizing their contributions, the U.S. sees them as expendable. The hypocrisy is blatant because the same Western powers that fueled African poverty and destabilization now want to reject the very people their policies displaced. This isn't new. The West has always wanted to extract the best from Africa while discarding the rest. It exploited African labor during the transatlantic slave trade, extracted African resources during colonial rule, and continued to plunder African minerals, oil, and rare earth metals while keeping Africa poor through economic policies. Now, it seeks to deport African immigrants while continuing to steal from African nations. Traoré sees through this deception. His warning to Trump and the US is a direct rejection of this colonial-era mindset. He is making it clear, you cannot destroy African economies, force African people to flee, and then discard them when they arrive in your country. The era of Western hypocrisy is over. A core theme of Traoré's warning is Black unity, not just in Africa, but across the world. His call for the Black diaspora to return home and reconnect with Africa is one of the biggest threats to US and Western dominance. For centuries, the US and Europe have profited from the division and disempowerment of Black people. They disrupted African civilizations with the transatlantic slave trade. They erased African history and Black identity through colonization and systemic racism. They suppressed Black economic power in America and Europe through racist policies designed to maintain white supremacy. But now, Black people worldwide are waking up. The more they realize that their struggles, whether in the US, the Caribbean, or Europe, are connected to the oppression of Africa, the more powerful they become. This is precisely why the West is terrified. The moment Black people unite globally, the Western system of racial oppression begins to crumble. Traoré understands that the West's fear of Africa is rooted in its economic dependency on African resources. The US and France have long enriched themselves by exploiting African minerals like gold, uranium, lithium, and oil. They control African banking systems to keep Africa financially dependent. They ensure African economies remain tied to Western institutions like the IMF and World Bank. If Africa breaks free economically, Western dominance collapses. This is why the US and France continue to overthrow independent African leaders, support puppet governments that serve Western interests, and spread propaganda that Africa is poor, chaotic, and ungovernable. Traoré's leadership directly threatens this control. He is advocating for African self-sufficiency, economic independence, and the rejection of Western financial and military influence. This is why the US and its allies see him as a threat, because he represents a new generation of African leaders who refuse to be puppets. However, the leaders challenging Western powers face threats, even assassination attempts. It's an open secret that Western powers have a long history of eliminating Black leaders who resist them. Patrice Lumumba was assassinated with CIA involvement in 1961. Thomas Sankara was overthrown and murdered in 1987, with suspected French and US involvement. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. were eliminated after challenging US white supremacy. Muammar Gaddafi was killed in a NATO-backed coup in 2011 after advocating for African independence. Traoré understands this history. He knows he is a target. But unlike past African leaders, he is prepared. His warning to the US and its allies is clear. If you attempt to assassinate me, Africa will not stay silent. The world is watching. The old tactics of eliminating Black resistance will no longer work. What do you think IBRAHIM Traoré and other powerful African leaders should do to stop Donald Trump from deporting Africans? Isn't it true that Africa has to unite and resist the American policy of getting rid of Africans? In the comment section right below, share your thoughts on the opinion that America and other Western countries should not have the power to decide when to take Africans, as they did in the transatlantic slave trade, and when to deport them, as Donald Trump is planning now. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring videos on Black Africa, its history, rich arts and culture, and things the world should know about. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.